Elden Ring is trash. Hollow Knight is boring, and don't even get me started on Expedition 33. It's unoriginal. Is there a person that can make these statements and easily convince you that these are true just because they said it? No, because gamers care more about whether the game actually is good or not. This is the claim that some people are trying to make about highguard, that only failed because that highguard is a victim of a hate campaign. When a game is genuinely good, the players are not going to just easily get convinced just because someone told them it's bad. Pointing fingers towards gamers, user reviews, and influencers is completely lacking accountability. Salam, my name is Mustafa. I am a game developer. I am the solo developer of Sabr Path. In the past, I've worked in the game industry. I've done administrative work at Treyarch during the development of Black Ops 4. I've done QA with Zwift, which is an indoor cycling game. At this point, I've taught at the college level for a year in both game and graphics design. I currently have one game that's on Steam, and I have another horror game that's in the works. In my last video, I talked about highguard. I discussed how the game had a huge launch, reaching 100,000 players, and then instantly lost all those players. Now the writing is on the walls. Wildlight Studios is definitely going to shut down. They had a mass layoff. Most of the developers have been laid off, and they have a small skeleton crew keeping the game running, likely to sunset the game. There have been former Wildlight developers sharing their thoughts on social media such as LinkedIn, and one in particular, Josh Sobel, he's been extremely vocal. This guy's a technical artist and an animation rigger. Keep in mind, he is not a person of management. He is not a person of leadership. He's just a dude that worked there. I'm certain that he was not in charge of any of the major choices that led to the downfall of the game. And at the same time, he is just one of 100 people. His opinion is his. I'm certain there are other developers who do agree with what he has said, but I'm also certain that there are other developers who are like, shut up, stop saying these things out loud. The point being, he is not the voice of the studio, and I also don't want people to harass him. He put out this tweet in which he quickly deleted afterwards, making an analogy between the free-to-play game highguard and a farmer giving away free apples. First of all, this is a terrible analogy. This makes absolutely no sense in the context of highguard. Highguard is a free-to-play game. They need to have players enjoy the game long enough so that they can buy microtransactions, and the microtransactions will allow the studio to keep going. That is the whole purpose of a live service game, to get people to constantly buy these microtransactions. This has no parallel with a farmer who just wants to give away apples for free because he has too many or whatever the reason is that he's giving them away. And then this statement here. I'm going to make sure all my friends review bomb your Yelp page over this. This statement is completely dismissive of all of the legit complaints of this game. People complain about the maps being too large, the gameplay loop being too boring, searching these large maps for loot, melee smashing crystals just to grind for resources. All these are legit complaints that the game is too slow and boring. Regardless as to whether most of these people spent less than an hour, the game was too boring for people to play more than an hour. This is the reality of a free-to-play live service game. You can lose players just as quickly as you can bring them in. Because there is absolutely no paywall to invest to get into the game, there's no reason for them to stay around longer when they realize that the game's too boring. If the game gets fun after 5 or 10 hours of the game, that was a bad gameplay loop. You should have done better to lure them in within that first 15 minutes of the game. Josh says that the game failed because of coordinated hate campaigns and toxic creators. This statement can easily be refuted because 100,000 people played the game. They didn't drop the game because later somebody else told them that's bad. They dropped the game because they tasted the cardboard mechanics and they didn't want any more of it. He also said that growth requires friction. Being humble is a developer's greatest tool. There's an unbelievable lack of self-awareness here. Do I really need to explain? I mentioned this in the first video, that Wildlight Studios is about 100 devs that came from Respawn, the guys who worked on Apex Legends and Titanfall. The problem is that they left Respawn working on a content grind for Apex Legends, a live service game, and they ended up rebuilding basically the same thing. But rather than escaping that content grind and working on a passion project, they basically built the same thing all over again, but not as good. I also mentioned that the blame should go towards the studio heads and whatever venture capitalist executives were influencing them, because clearly they had to have some sort of money. And at that point, I assumed it was venture capitalists. The reason why the studio heads are definitely one of the largest factors to blame is because they decided to make the wrong game. One thing I tell my students is that it's important to figure out which game you're going to make before you start making it. One way you can figure out how to do this is to create a Venn diagram with 3 circles. One circle being games that you want to make. That way you're passionate for it. Another circle being games that you can make. That way you have the skill set for it. And finally, games that can make money. You want to make sure that the games have an audience. And live service games barely have a free audience at this point. People who are into live service games are already playing one. It's a crowded market with very big titles, and you need to be extraordinary to compete against these titles. Everyone else who aren't already playing a live service game don't want to play a live service game. Gamers are tired of live service games. The game failed because it lacked an audience and also lacked artistic passion to make it stand out against the competitors. And let's talk about the Shills real quick, who betrayed the trust of everybody. There's specific game reviewers and influencers that Sabr tagged in his article. All these people did was lie to the gamers that this game is great, and for those who saw the game beforehand, before it got released, they gave the developers a false sense of hope. Even if these developers are your friends, you're setting them up for failure. It's like all these people who show up on American Idol and they can't sing at all. Those people had a delusion that they're great singers, and then they made a fool of themselves on live TV. If you're only surrounded by yes men telling you that you're doing a great job, then you can't improve. These corporate shills only care about themselves. They prioritize themselves getting early access and free games and swag. The consumers no longer believe them because everything that comes out of their mouth is clearly a lie. And they set up the developers to be jobless because they never had any real feedback telling them this game needs changes. In Josh Sabr's article, he says, "We're a small independent studio." He also says, "We built this with our own hands. We didn't use AI and we had no corporate oversight." In my previous video, I did say they had some venture capitalist investors to help fund the game. It appears I'm incorrect. It's even worse. Tencent and TIMI form a massive tech conglomerate. A venture capitalist strictly invests for financial equity and eventually IPO. Tencent, on the other hand, invests to acquire the IP and secure long-term service revenue. The studio never had any indie freedom at all. And this was apparent from my previous video. So for Josh to call themselves a indie studio is completely false. And it's actually worse than being owned by a publisher because the investors can walk away, write it off as a financial loss, and they don't have to worry about anything else. Now, Wildlight Studios has to clean up the mess. And on top of that, they don't have any of the benefits of the resources that they would get from a AAA publisher such as EA. For example, having the QA resources, hundreds of people QAing the game. This is very apparent with the game having performance issues at launch, as well as even having an exploit in the game. If you wiggle the analog stick on your controller that's plugged in and then go back to mouse and keyboard, then you enable the controller's aim assist on top of using your mouse and keyboard accuracy. They clearly didn't have the research and development, nor the play testing and focus testing. They're treated like a AAA studio and have the goal of a AAA studio to make a live service game without any of the AAA benefits. Josh admit that they are in an echo chamber. This is lightning in a bottle. I trust this team wholeheartedly. If there's one project nobody in the industry is worried will fail, it's yours. This has mainstream hit written all over it. There's no way this will flop. I could play this game all day. With the lack of focus testing and being surrounded by shills, of course they think that their project is great. As a game developer, it's really important to get feedback from other people. When you're working on a project and you're this close, you don't see the whole picture. You need someone else who's a little farther away that can let you know what they see that you don't see. Once they started getting feedback that people didn't like the game, you can tell that they were in panic mode. They changed the game from 3v3 to 5v5. Why was the game never 5v5 to begin with? It probably needed more than just 5v5 plus some AI creeps for PvE. This is something that they would have learned from focus testing, but clearly they did not get that from Tencent. Tencent's TIMI division, they focus on mobile games, utilizing former AAA first-person shooter game development veterans. So it makes sense that they got former Respawn Studios to make another live service game. On top of that, Stephen Ma, he holds a permanent executive seat with Tencent. He is on the advisory board for the Game Awards. This makes a lot more sense as to why the game had the final reveal at the Game Awards and Geoff didn't get paid for it. Not too long ago, the Game Awards highlighted this guy, Amir Sadvat. They framed him as a selfless guy who helped people who needed to find jobs. Ends up that he is also a Tencent executive who was just running a glorified unemployment list. This then leads me to ask the question to you, the audience. What else does Geoff Keighley and the Game Awards push on you that is completely corporate interest? They're very transparent that the entire show is about making money. But how far beyond is it just Geoff Keighley and the Game Awards though? PC gamers seems to always be right behind them and cheering them on too. This is exactly why gamers got angry over 10 years ago during the first Gamergate. The games media, as well as the game publishers and game devs, should not have an intertwined relationship with each other. This is a conflict of interest, and this is why no one trusts anything. Back when I worked at Treyarch during the development of Black Ops 4, the studio had a small theater. Whenever we had a new trailer, we'd preview it within this theater. Before the reveal trailer for multiplayer, we were able to view it ahead of time in this trailer. It basically displayed all the operatives and their special moves. I came out of the theater with my coworker next to me, and one of the senior producers saw us. He had a big grin on his face. He was pretty excited about it, and he said something along the lines of, "What'd you think about that? Pretty good trailer, right?" I told him visually it flowed well, the message conveyed very well, I can understand how the gameplay is and how all the operatives work. But my problem was that the song that was used was very cliche. I can't remember which classic rock song it was. Maybe it was a Guns N' Roses song. It was a song that was overplayed at the time. I told him that, and I quickly saw his expression change. When the trailer finally was revealed, a completely different song was used. I'm not saying I'm the reason why that song was changed, but I am saying that because it got changed, someone else was thinking the same thing. Changes aren't going to be made when no one speaks up and tells the truth. It's like with Miyamoto. He was a big shot in Nintendo even in the early years. The original version of Super Mario Bros. 2 is now called The Lost Levels. You can play it on Super Mario All-Stars. The game is just bad. It's extremely challenging. It has unfair level design. And Miyamoto wasn't told this until one of the QA testers from Nintendo of America told him that this was not good. He didn't dismiss this criticism. Instead, he thought about it. The game got scrapped and he made Doki Doki Panic. This became Super Mario Bros. 2 in America. This is why honesty is important. You're never going to get the right feedback to improve if everyone around you is a yes man. And using everybody else as a scapegoat to avoid responsibility and accountability is not setting yourself up for improvement. Let me know what you think about this situation. Ramadan Mubarak to all the Muslims who watch this video. Please leave a like to help boost the algorithm. My schedule is very tight right now, so I'm not able to make a lot of these videos. But if you want to keep up with me, I have been doing weekly live streams. Thanks a lot. Take care. Salam.